So, welcome everyone to the Way of Soul Remembering podcast, where we give people an opportunity to share their spiritual life, their experience, and inspire with what they've learned on their journey. I'm very excited to have Edward Foster with me today, who is an artist. And, I would, refer to Edward as very much a pilgrim of life, had a real sense of the spirit in the way that he lives his life. And I'm looking forward to getting to know him a bit more on this podcast. And I think we're going to, have a magical time together. So first, Eddie, because Ed, often known as Eddie, could you share a little bit about your work and anything that's really just currently alive for you at the moment?
Well, hello, Tom. It's lovely to see you and to be on this lovely podcast of yours. So thank you for asking me to come on first and foremost. I'm an artist. So I paint in the visual arts. I've always done that throughout my entire life. So it is my job and my profession, but it's just me as well. So it's since childhood I've done that. So I just paint the world as beautifully as I can, really, in a very simple way. I also write about it too, and music too, and compose music and all that. So that's me. And at the moment, you say something special that's happening at the moment to
Yeah,
make me
just
say
what's,
something
what's
new to you.
currently alive, either within your inner life or something to do with your artistic work. What's kind of do you have a certain focus at the moment that's kind of resonant with you?
Well, I do, but it's like a continuous thing, but it keeps popping up, or shall we say, keeps weaving into my life, and it is. I think you mentioned pilgrim at the beginning. It's a pilgrimage of life, and to me, I am a pilgrim in life, like we all are, and so through my art, music, and writings, etc. I try and show that at the present moment, and it takes different forms, but in a sense, it's continuous. So it's like a snake going through life, spiraling through life, or a river, shall we say? A river would be better.
Mhm.
Spiraling through life. It's different, but it's the same as well. So these new things that come up for me all the time are like a new experience, but they seem familiar.
Wonderful, wonderful. And one of the things that Eddie and I wanted to do on this call, and hopefully it will be, curious and spark your imagination and your kind of spirit energy, is that we wanted to bring in some poetry into the session, either some of our poems or poems that others have written that we're inspired by, and maybe weaving it a little bit on some of the pilgrimages that we've been on. So I think you brought a poem, haven't you, Eddie? You've got something in mind. So shall either I go first or shall you go first for this first sort of sharing and a poem or a meaningful kind of journey that we've been on together?
I think Tom, you should begin with the poetry.
I should begin with
As
the
the follow.
poetry. So what I'm going to try to do, and if this doesn't quite work, what we're going to do is we're going to edit the images into the video. But it might work fine for me just to this is an image of Fountains Abbey. So I've sent it to Ed if he wants, Eddie, if he wants to have a look at it. Now this is a resonant memory for me. It was a really special time of my life. I was really energetically alive. I was reading a lot of William Blake and being inspired by his vision. Fountains Abbey is an ancient Cistercian abbey in Yorkshire. Yorkshire's where my sort of father's side of the family come from. So what I'll do is I'll read out the poem, and this will get us into the flow of it. I've entitled it Summer. That summer around my 21st year felt graceful, body free, carrying Blakean wisdom in my pocket, that radiant yellow book, first edition, or perhaps second, life abounding off and in its pages. If your limbs be parched, there is a river, go and bathe them. Well, of course. So after a long walk across this world's grassy courses, parched in limb and over hot, standing by the man-made huge pool of Fountains Abbey, Yorkshire, I plunged in for a swim, perhaps also with a slight ringing of Ted Hughes' pike in my ears. Though I didn't plunge deep, I arose refreshed. Sometimes the inner rule is more important than man's prohibitions. Freeing the body in an ethical way brings health of the mind and some liberation, a quickening of its flame. There is no freedom of the body without a oneness in mind, and the mind alone cannot integrate itself. Just as someone looking into a fragmented mirror could not recognize themselves, such the words of those monks from the abbey seemed to say to me. They looked to God. I emerged from the water, refreshed and cooled. The long walk back heading towards Leeds, across fields, ditches, whatever was experienced was as bliss. Body fully embraced by the sun, lungs and ribs expanded on days like this, sometimes happening upon an old village bookshop, picking up a book on poetry, pages opening, and reading in the old sacred sanctioned way without any internal recitation of the words, in other words, without a kind of a self-parody of seeing, but rather sense and feel, reading through silent sublime recognitions of being, feeling life's fragmented bringing feeling life's fragmented bringing being in real heart, mind, and mind food, the vividness of life seen through another portion of life looking at itself. In other words, what others have felt in this land of rain, sea, and tears. The place I hold is equal to my share of life's beingness. Is that too with you? Giving and receiving, both sacred acts. The more you give, the more you will receive one way or another. It is as the heart crafts it. A blind beggar can give a better gift than a hefty king of riches, or a king receive better than a beggar. As Blake said, unorganized innocence is an impossibility. Unorganized innocence is an impossibility. Later that night, after missing the train at Leeds Station, I lay down my youthful sack of bones, and in the early hours of the fresh morning, in a restful slumber, I heard the cleaner seeing me say, "That is beautiful."
Mm. No, lovely. Yeah, beautiful. It's lovely.
Mm. So that was really, yeah, it was a moving time for me because I was really feeling I was kind of integrating this kind of Blakean sense of just like liberation of expression and just freeing myself from a kind of a feeling of confinement within either the kind of intellectual sort of conceptual mind or just really allowing myself to express myself, which I think is an important thing for every 21-year-old, or probably important thing for anyone at any time of life. So that's a little bit of yeah, and well, my first inner pilgrimage, Fountains Abbey poem, 21 years old. Would you like to share something,
Sure.
Eddie?
Yeah. Well, yours was very personal. So this one I'm going to read is a quite a personal poem. It's not very long. I dedicated it to my cousin who died recently, who was a very close. He's very close to me. Obviously, he was my cousin, but we were very close. And he died far too young. So I wrote this simple poem based on the structure. It's similar to A.E. Housman poems structure. So I love his stuff. I think the poetry tradition in the British Isles is quite something. It's
Mm.
absolutely stunning. So we're very blessed with that. So I'll just read this. It's very short. It's called "The Song of Grief." The robin sings a song of grief, of leaves that turn to brown, as summer ends its life, so brief, takes off its green-hued crown. Where rivers flow and streams delight, a sadness will remain, of life now gone, no longer bright, a void without a name. Yet I will find a greening way where grief is all but gone, and there recall a brighter day when we did walk as one.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So I, I, I
Um,
love the structure of poetry.
mm,
And the different forms, the different styles. Um, so that has a structure. That has actually a rhyming structure within it, and it has a syllable structure as well. Um, but the great thing about poetry and language, you can vary that so much. It's the message that comes through you. It's always the message that comes through you. And
mm,
language is wonderful, but it can be very restrictive, actually. So
mm,
we try and describe how we feel about something, or describe something that's happened. You can do that. You can give it structure and sentences and words, put them together to create this world. But often poetry is a great way of explaining something that you can't explain, because it
mm,
leaves things open. So it opens things rather than closes them.
mm,
Um, because often, like I say, language is beautiful, but it can restrict.
mm.
So, so I find these nuances between, uh, uh, language, words, and say art, painting. There's these differences, and music too. So you have these, they all have this wonderful different way of expressing. They all have
Yeah,
limitations, but also their openings too.
there's a tradition in there's a way of thinking about words in certain spiritual traditions across the earth, and that's that in a way, um it's not so much in the way that the word it is, of course, the crafting of the words, but also if someone's written a certain thing, and especially maybe often if it's through poetry or maybe in prose sometimes, you can in a way kind of help to convey and connect to the almost what you could say the experience of consciousness at the time when the person was crafting it or writing it in some way. And when I was kind of, feeling into this poem, it really takes me back to that time. And hopefully, as you say, through poetry, it can help others to open up to that space. And sometimes, if I just try to convey that experience, as you say, just in a conversation, you might not get so close. You might not get so close to that, the feeling that I'm trying to kind of convey. So, yeah, on that kind of, well, before we kind of go a bit more into Ed's wonderful art and the pilgrimage that he's been on through his art, I'd be curious to hear, and I think other viewers will do, what was your way into, the life of the artist? How did you kind of come to it? And what age? And what was your kind of journey like into your kind of world of creation and being an artist?
Well, I mean, there's two ways of thinking of this. I'll go with the the most obvious way, which is the linear way. So so as a child, I had a very wonderful household, wonderful parents, and brother too, and we were just encouraged to create, to draw, to be ourselves. You know, to be thoughtful as well of others, and but just to, we had space to create, and mum and dad would create with me and my brother too. So it was a lovely household. I was very blessed. So this enabled me just to, to go into the child world, to be a child completely. And I was born in the 70s, so I grew up 70s and the 80s, and I think childhood was very different then to how it is now. And so you had a lot of freedoms within that. And so from a very early age, I remember just exploring everywhere, just anything. You go out all day and you come back. That's what it was like. And of course, then I'd like to draw. So I'd draw cartoons and do all sorts of drawing. But I would draw things I did as well. So I've just continued being a child, going out playing all day and drawing it. So in that sense, and then you leave school, and try college or university, bits of things like that. So I went to university for a bit, but it wasn't quite what I wanted. And you think, oh, I should do this, should do that, but really, I'm just a painter.
But did
I'm an
you study
artist.
art at uni, or what did you do
No,
then?
I didn't study art at all. I studied art through myself. So I
Mm.
copied a master's, spend hours just copying Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Raphael, Rubens, you name it. So I just devote myself to that from
This
late teens, really.
I really like, yeah, I like the feeling of that, and it kind of, yeah, it reminds me of to some extent of William Blake's life, and that he did have training as an apprenticeship and engraver and things, but at some point in his fairly younger life, he was starting to operate a little bit outside of the main institutions, and it was for him a lot about just copying the masters, and I'm very curious about that. And you say you come from an artistic family, so were other people around you supportive of your quest to kind of learn how to be a professional artist? Did you have kind of people that doubted that within that you could do that or make a living from that, or did you always feel kind of supported in that?
It's a good question. I think you have a mix of everything, don't you? Really, um, the greatest support that you'll ever get is from yourself,
Mm,
but you don't always realize that.
mm.
So, but you also have outside support too. So yeah, I had wonderful support. The support I had was a sense of, we believe in you. We don't want to tell you what to do, but we also want you to do all right. So you have you have a gentle hand on the shoulder. It's okay, and maybe a little push now and again, or hey, just get your act together. You sort of need to be told things. Just get your act together a bit,
Mm,
because sometimes you just need help.
mm.
But then you need, well, you I believe in you. You do what you want. My dad was great. He would say, um, he said, "I just want you to do whatever you
Oh,
want.
lovely.
Live your
Oh,
life."
wow.
So yeah,
It'd be a
it was a
blessing
wonderful
if
guy. My
everyone's
dad, my
parents said
mum
that
was.
to them, It'd be a blessing if everyone said
Yeah, I
that to
mean, we
them, but
had
that's not
things.
always the
We
case,
had things. No, but we had things. I mean, we had rough and tumbles. We loved each other very much. We'd have little fights and stuff like that. This is the 80s.
And was your father a visual artist like
You
you?
know, little things. I mean, well, but his profession. He was an archaeologist. So
Oh, an
he was,
archaeologist.
but he was a really, yeah, he was a very good drawer. Really good at drawing. He was just so he would do things. He would draw like my mum a birthday card every year. They were very much in love with my mum and dad.
Yeah.
So and he would always produce this, and he would just draw. And so I'd sit and draw with him for hours. And my brother too, very good artist. He's an artist as well. He's a writer. And then and my mum too. It was just that wasn't their profession,
Hmm.
artist, but it was. I just thought my household was normal,
Yeah.
but when I went to other places, other people's houses, other friends' houses, and that, I realised it's not normal, is it really mine? But it was because I was brought up in Accrington in Lancashire, and
Yeah.
it's when you're brought up there, you don't have any pretensions about anything.
Right.
You're it's not an easy, it wasn't an easy town, but I was sort of connected with that, but in a bubble of this creativity. So I had both going on,
Ah, okay,
which
okay,
was
okay.
good.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. So you
So
sort of
I had a sense of I can do. I can go into different realms, but I can be quite serious as well. I can do practical things like,
that's a
stuff.
blessing. Yeah, it's a
So,
blessing if you can have
uh,
that earthy kind of leveling groundedness, but at the same time, it's that imaginal connection. I'm just on a real practical level, your voice just kind of cut out a little bit before. Are you as close
oh,
to the router as you can be, or is it?
yeah,
It's fine.
sometimes my signal sometimes can go a little. It's not that. It's just I'm in the countryside,
it's
so
fine.
sometimes
It's
I
fine.
might get a
It's
dip.
fine.
So if my voice goes a little, just let me know.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, okay, okay.
I can't.
Okay. So yeah. So okay. So you were kind of self-taught in a way, but also did you have? I mean, in your you were copying from the masters, and you were particularly drawn to I think you were saying the kind of the old masters, the Renaissance painters. Was there a particular one that you were most feeling that you were really connected to at that time, a particular artist?
Well, this is I would say this was the late teens. So before that was more, illustration, comics, cartoons. So so if I may, just before that, I'll mention them because actually I think cartoons are great to learn from. Sounds
Mm.
strange, but some of the greatest artwork are in cartoons or graphic novels, whatever you might call it. And Tintin and Asterix are something that everyone should study. There's no question about it. I sincerely mean that because you learn about expressions, you learn about stories, you learn about construction of different planes, um, you know, perspective, all this sort of thing. They're absolutely wonderful. So then from there, when I went into the masters, yeah. So there's quite a lot of artists. I loved all the Italian Renaissance, of course, like Michelangelo and Da Vinci. I still love Da Vinci, Leonardo. Um, but Rembrandt springs to mind. Dutch
Oh
artist,
wow.
superb,
Mm.
absolutely amazing. Um, and the pre-Raphaelites. I
Yeah.
was very very into pre-Raphaelites, sort of around that late teens, early 20s. There was a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There was a lot of art, really. I'm talking about the older masters there. The reason I'm talking about those ones in particular at the moment is because when I copied them, I would copy the
Mm.
figure, the human figure.
Mm.
And that's really how I learnt to draw. Because if you think of the muscle parts of the body, the different anatomy, etc.,
Mm.
if you study that, it's like studying everything in a way.
Mm. Mm.
The different components, how the different components come together, how you make something more rounded.
And were you kind of also moved, and I used to really enjoy the kind of Flemish artists like Bruegel the Younger, Bruegel the Elder. Some of his kind of scenes were so kind of moving and so human at the same time. It's just really like in touch with a sense of life. I used to kind of love his kind of
Yeah,
work.
great stuff. Great, all of that. To be honest, there's nothing I'm not influenced by. I'm copy the thing about the Bruegel and Hieronymus Bosch, things like that.
Mm.
The Dutch stuff, which is very different. The early Dutch stuff, because they were the first to do the oil paintings, really,
Mm.
the Flemish style. So Flemish, it wasn't just the Dutch; it was sort of Lowlands, Belgium, and
Hmm.
they were the first to really perfect the oil
Hmm.
painting. It wasn't
Hmm.
the Italians. It was more it was the Dutch really, um,
And
and that gets overlooked. Or the Flemish, should we say?
did you ever do, because a lot of the artwork that I see you do is of the kind of kind of mythic settings and of kind of animal forms, and in nature it has that real sense of kind of mythic spirituality to it. But did you also sometimes do more of the kind of just kind of scenes from everyday life in the way that kind of Bruegel did as well, or
Yeah,
were you always kind of drawn to the most sort of mythic dimension?
um, no, yeah, the sort of you mean basically just like a landscape in the sense of a factual
Or
landscape.
like, the market square of
Oh,
Accrington, or,
oh, the Market Square of Accrington. Oh,
I don't know. I
go
presume
for
that there is
it.
one. I presume there's a West one.
Oh, it used to be a great market. There is one still. It's but actually, jumping ahead, I did a whole series of paintings on Northern life. I called them, and it was it was caricatured, a bit like the Borrego, Hieronymus Bosch, exactly that sort of style. Um, but that was a bit later. But I did that. But yeah, I would go out. I would go out sketching and things like that. But I felt trapped by the reality just seen through the eyes,
Mm,
should we say. So imagination has always been with me.
mm,
Um, and so I feel that's just as real as what we term reality.
mm,
So I love to do studies, like I said, the masters. I like to copy. I love to copy them. I love that big. That was about the techniques and the art.
I'll
That
chat to Eddie after this podcast, but maybe we could re-edit into this chat some of these earlier paintings that we're kind of referring to
Oh,
here to give that sort of sense of the continuity to the more of the stuff that you're doing now. So maybe let's get a bit more into the stuff that you're doing now, Eddie. Yeah, we were talking about kind of bringing in some of the images of more of I'm not sure, I mean, a fairly recent kind of work and just kind of touching upon what inspired them if
mhm.
there was a kind of story behind them, the journey that you went on to create them. So maybe we can go into a bit of that now.
Yes, of course.
Which image or would you like to kind of touch on first?
Well, shall we start with one I've just finished a couple of months ago? The Shrine of the Oak.
Yeah, you see that?
Yeah, that one. Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's beautiful. Talk us through this. Talk us through this, Eddie.
Well, I mean, this one's just finished. So this is just to give a context. This is a really big painting. It's about 40 inches by 30. Is it 36? So it's what's that? 3.5, 4 foot by 3 foot. It's quite a big painting. And this is, well, it's an oak tree. In a sense, there's some obvious things about this picture. Art for me is you have this obviousness, and then you have other things that you start to realize the more and more you look at the picture. So we can obviously see there's a big oak tree. That captures the center of your the vision straight away, and then from there you can look down into the sort of bottom right hand corner, and you've got the figure going towards. This is a pilgrim, and the pilgrim often comes into my work. It doesn't always have to be in a human form. It can be in an animal form or anything else. So next to the figure on the bottom right, there's a little fox.
Mm.
And the fox is in a lot of my paintings. And so often I might depict the pilgrim as a fox, for instance. So, yeah, in a sense, this is a very simple painting in what it means. It's the Shrine of the Oak. There's a huge oak tree in this forest. The pilgrim is walking towards. He's found this shrine, and it's almost like a temple. Um, Maybe this is where the pilgrim is aiming for, but not quite. Because I also do things like put little portals in. And portals, in a sense, what I mean by portals, it means a place somewhere else to go to. So
Mm.
if you look at the sort of on the right, there's a bit of light and the trees go in. Often in my paintings, I do these tunnels. And it's as though each painting I do now seems to happen over time. And it seems to, yeah, over the last several years, it's come into my work where there's a way out of this painting. And that way out is going to go into the next painting.
Ah,
And now
that's
I don't know how that came about, but it did come about. Yeah. So I realized that that's happening.
right. That's so
And
interesting. So there's a kind of so you've touched on a few things there. You kind of there's the main visual thing that we see that I see the oak tree, but you're also as you say when we're looking deeper, we're noticing other things like the fox and the wild boar and the deer and the bird. And also what I notice is you've kind of got light, like a kind of light. I mean, underneath the roots of the tree, you kind of have
mhm.
quite a bright light, whereas you would expect it to be sort of dark in a sense. So is that a sense of kind of giving light under the roots, as it were?
Well, under those, if you can look close under there, they're like little tunnels in a sense.
Ah,
So again, this is something I use quite a lot in my art. These tunnels, and again, that's about going somewhere, going underneath, going in. There's mystery with it. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I don't fully know what it is, but that's a part of art. Art is not about prescription and saying this is you should take this and this is what it means. Art is about saying, well, let's have a look at what's causing these things in a way. If you think of it in that way, in a healing way or whatever, it's a sense of let's open up more wonder for you. You
yeah,
know, let's see what this. I'm not saying, oh, this is definitely this or definitely that, because I don't fully know. How could I fully know? That would be boring. So
I'm trying to
I
I'm trying to remember what the Blake quote is where he says something very similar to that. It will come back to me in a minute when he was talking about the wisest of the ancients. He basically said something like the wisest of the ancients didn't make anything too explicit because the implicit kind of rouses the faculties to act in some kind of way. It's
hmm,
that's not the exact quote, but that's kind of what he was saying in a way that this that you don't want to give the was you don't want to tell the ending of the story before anyone's even begun on the journey, as it were.
yeah, yeah.
So it's
It's
really, really beautiful, really nice. And is there a particular oak tree that you really feel sort of connection to in your life?
I've visited. I mean, I've illustrated a lot of. Well, I've drawn a lot of trees. So I've travelled a lot around the country finding ancient trees. I do these things. I love that. And so there's some fabulous oak trees. There's there's quite a lot. I mean, the thing about oak trees, in particular, is well, they all vary. It depends where they are. So the ones that are able to just live the life out, that they're a bit like old men. They sort of they get a bigger belly and they sort of spread out, and
Mm,
so you'll find these like on estates would have been like old hunting grounds or something like that. You find these could be up to 1,000 years old oak trees, and there's a few I know,
mm.
and they sort of spread the bellies out. And there's one not a million miles from where you are near Bristol, I think. Savernake Forest is that? It's not a million miles, is it? It's that sort of
Save a snake
west.
forest.
Is that how you say
Near
it? No.
Marlborough, near Avebury, save a snake
Yeah,
forest.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I've been
Save us.
there. Yeah, very much. I've
Yeah,
been
there's
there.
one called Big Belly, isn't there, by the road? So that's an example.
I don't know if I've seen that one. I'll have to check it out next time I'm
Oh, you must go there. It's right by the road.
there. Okay.
And then, so there's other, so I visited lots of trees, yew trees especially. I love finding old ancient yews. So the oak is, yeah, it's got a lot of character, and it's very associated with these lands. The oak tree, it's very,
Mm,
British. It's our
mm,
tree, isn't it? We constructed all our boats from it, and our
mm.
cathedrals, the towers, and so it's got a tradition.
Yeah, very
So yeah,
much. Very much. Very
so
much.
mhm.
So what's the way out of oh no, did you say you don't know exactly what's the way out of this painting into the next piece of work, but what would be the kind of the bridge from here? Um, waiting for what the bridge is. It's not coming. It's not coming. Shall I stop this share and we can go back onto the visual? No, so thank you so much for sharing the painting of the oak. The oak's important for me as well. I've been making this brew recently, that was kind of gathered from some of the bark of an oak tree where I live, and I was following a kind of ancient Welsh recipe for a kind of oak beer in a way. It's not exactly
Ah,
become like beer, but it's drinkable. It's kind of more like a sort of oaky vinegar in some way. But yeah, so that's a kind of special connection I have at the moment with the oak, and I always find the oaks very, very healing just to be with, just to sit with, just to kind of be in their energetic presence, as it were. And where I live, there's a big kind of estate, and there's huge numbers of oaks and yews and some wonderful trees, and I'm lucky enough to go there every day. But I feel a particular connection with one of these oaks. It really helps me and serves me. So
mm.
where should we go to next? I'm curious about, some of the other images that you've brought. Maybe we should turn our attention to one of the other ones.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm just trying to think. Well, shall we go to the deer at dusk, which is
Hmm.
deer? Yeah, that's a good one to look at, because that might connect very nicely with what we've just looked at. So yeah. So this is quite. It's not an old painting, but it's about 10 years since I painted this, and again, it's very it has a you see my artwork. When people ask me to describe my artwork, so I might a bit and then stutter. so because it's very hard to describe one's artwork, so I make sure that I can show people. But I always say it's you understand, you'll see it and you know that it, like for instance, this is a deer. You know that it's a deer, but it's also stylized as well. So it's a sense of it's real, what we see through the eyes. I've mentioned this before, but it's also what we sense as well or perceive too. So do I see? So this is based on something that actually happened. Deer at dusk. There was a deer at dusk in this forest. It was a very magical meeting. I see many deers where I am, but this was a particularly powerful one. And the process of me creating my art usually is I have an experience. I might then scribble it down in a sketchbook. It might be just something, a few rough lines that I do, just to remind me. You know, like, so if you have a diary and something happens, you write a few lines of what happens, and then you can go straight back into that, like you were saying with your poem, you can go straight back into that moment, and then it expands out, and you remember lots of different things. It's like writing your dreams down. So you have a dream, you write down a few words, and you come back to it, you remember it all. It's quite amazing that it happens. So that's the same process for this. And then, if I like the experience, I feel like, oh, that would make a good painting. Then I'll spend ages on drawing. So we see the painting here, but the actual process of drawing it first is often the most deepest I get into the picture. So I'll do a drawing, and I'll spend ages just trying to find things and patterns and realizations. And then when I've got the drawing done, then I'll make a painting from that drawing. So most of what you see in this painting has been already realized in the drawing, and then obviously without color, and then I put it into the paint. But you see, I know my process. I've been doing it all my life, so I can see ahead. Mostly, it's like walking along a trail and you go into a wood. You can see where the trail goes, but it's still a bit you're uncertain about. So it's like that, really.
It's a
So
beautiful one. I actually have, or at least a kind of postcard image of this one in my home at the moment. So I'm fairly familiar with this one. It's really fantastic. I often feel a deep kind of connection to deers when I see them in nature. They have a sort of sense that you sort of feel like they're kind of walking between the worlds in some way, or when they just stop and stare at you, it can be quite a sort of moving or sort of powerful experience.
yeah, I agree, and that's lovely what you said, between the worlds. I think there is something about them that evoke that feeling, because they have an elegance about them often, don't they, as well? I mean, they do vary the different deer that we have, but they have an elegance, which and a quietness. They're not
Very
like
much,
a
yeah.
crashing animal, really. I'm going to leap over a fence elegantly, and so
Yeah, yeah.
it's a sense of ballet in nature.
I think
So there's something very that liminal space, that in between, and you feel enchanted by them almost, and that you would follow them. And I have done that. I've seen deer and I followed them on purpose to
Oh
see if I
wow.
can see what realm they go into.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I've had quite some beautiful experiences from that. So, and then I've created art from that
Oh wow.
too.
That's
And
really
then
beautiful.
and from stuff like that, you see, from your experiences, and then so I'll have an experience, and then I'll create it into an artwork, and then it might be a year, 2 years later, a few months later, another experience will happen that is connected with that. So it's like
Yeah.
almost a knowledge. And I don't mind talking about this, being open about this, because um, we do get things that come to us which are like signs for something else, or an inner knowledge, or it's like something happens, and then you consider what that means
Oh,
afterwards, and you
very much,
realize,
very
oh my
much.
gosh, that means
Yeah,
this.
very much. I
Mm.
had I had an intriguing experience a week ago or so, and maybe I could put the image onto this screen when I re-edit it in. I just was going back into my bedroom, and it looked like a bird had flown against the window, but the wings were really stretched out. But in between the wings, it really, it kind of just looked like this beautiful fish. It looked like a beautiful fish in the window, and also almost like a kind of a turtle or something. And it just was this moment of kind of we kind of read, uh, someone of a more skeptical scientific makeup can kind of say, actually, some of my family's in Yorkshire, and I put this on Facebook, and some people were saying, you know, I see a fish. This is for me. This is connection to Archangel Raphael, the sense of love, and you're being powerfully guided at the moment, Tom. And this is a kind of, a deep sort of message for you in your life. And my cousin, we call him Young David. Oh yeah, well he's not really that young anymore, but he just said, "What I see is a bird with a flaming big headache or something like that." So it's like it's very different the way people can experience these things. So in some ways, there is a personalness to these kind of what we're being guided by, these kind of synchronicities, or you could say kind of these sort of imaginal nudges in some sort of way.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and
you kind of need to,
you
sometimes
yeah.
it's good to keep it in your heart rather than sharing it with
Well,
everyone, you know.
yeah, yeah, I think so, but then that's the role of the artist to do that, to
You a
share
little
that
bit
thing.
broke up there. I
You see
didn't quite hear what you said.
oh, sorry. That's the role of the artist, perhaps, to share that.
Mm,
The
I
thing
think
is,
so.
what we want in life is wonder. What
Mm,
we want is a sense of the profound, something that takes us out of our regularity and puts us into a slightly chaotic place. We
mm,
crave it. Why do you think a lot of people watch films and stuff like that?
yeah.
We crave that. We want that, but do we want to go into it ourselves and experience it? Maybe a bit, a little bit. But the more you do bits and bits of it, the more it becomes more of a reality in a sense. I don't mean you should just go chaotic in your life and you have no idea what's going on. But it's better to have a little bit of that rather than to be, shall we say, imprisoned.
I totally agree with you in some ways. And I think there was an aspect of me. I remember one teacher saying to me that I was too wise young in some way, that I wasn't allowing this kind of youthful side of myself, which could be a bit more chaotic sometimes, to come through. Because I got into kind of wisdom traditions and Buddhism and these things from like quite a young age. And sometimes when I was having lucid dreams, conscious dreams, and I would connect to a wisdom figure, let's say in the Tibetan tradition of Padmasambhava, he would. I remember one time I called on him, and he turned up, or there was a response from the kind of the realm of the imaginal, or however you kind of perceive it. And this black woman turned up in leather on a motorbike, and she turned up and she was kind of gesturing for me to kind of to go onto the motorbike with her in a way. So that was very different than what I'd expected, because I'd expected a kind of yogic kind of sort of half Afghan, Tibetan looking dude to come with this sort of wisdom teaching. But at that time, it was that sense of nudging me into a little bit more what you're talking about, the kind of the, how to put it, like not being too limited on who we think that we are in some way, and being able
Yeah.
to be a bit more like raw or chaotic a little bit with our energy, obviously within certain ethical parameters, let's say, but not be too kind of confined within our own sense of who we think we need to be or should be in some way.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's very crucial because I always look at myself and think, hmm, you know, I'm being a bit dull, aren't I? Um, you know, what's going on here? So you think, well, and so an act of randomness is very good.
Mm.
To do something that you in the past you might not have even thought about, or you might have ignored, you might have even condemned in a sense. You know, I don't mean anything too extreme, but you know, go slightly against what it is that you think you are, and you think, oh God, it's liberating when you just open up. So
Oh, so
I
how
can.
can we bring in this chaotic factor into this conversation right now? What could we do? What do you feel
Well,
called to do?
I actually think chaotic thing is I mean art is a very good it's good because I got a little experience on art, so I think art is a good thing to do with this because art can give tranquility and flow and beauty, yeah, but
Why don't
also
we go on? I mean, why don't we just have a little pause in our talking then, and we'll encourage all of the viewers, wherever you are, to get a pen and paper or a paper and pencil. And why don't we just
Mhm.
spend 5 minutes doing some sort of art creation?
That's
Should we
good.
do that?
Yeah,
Should we do that?
I can
So
chat through that.
I've got some paper here. So let's just leave the viewers for a little bit of time. If you really can't find anything because you're in the car or you're listening on your headphone somewhere or something like that, you could maybe just
Yeah,
visualize
visual.
something.
Yeah,
Um, you know what I used to do when I was younger, when I was starting a piece of creative writing, I think this was, other people would do this, is they would just choose an object in the room, and whatever the object was, they would just start a story from that. So I kind of
hmm
feel like doing that in some way. So I've just chosen a little stone with a little image on. So I'll just do a
Well,
drawing of that.
what we can do is a couple of things. We could have an object that might be in front of you, or we could write as well. And we can, in fact, why don't we do both? So
Ah, beautiful.
we
Love
can
it.
do
Love it.
writing and we can do drawing.
Wonderful.
So what I, if I may, I think let's start with writing. If you can't write at the moment, don't worry. You can just think of something that'll do, or you could write in your imagination. Try and see the words,
Beautiful.
something like that. So just write without thinking. I'd say now. Let's start writing without thinking. Don't think. Just put your pencil on, pen on, and just write anything. Start with the word anything, and let it flow. Just write. Never think. Write. Let it all come out. Don't judge yourself. This is the most important thing. Just write. Let it flow. I'll do this for another 30 seconds. Last 10 seconds. Doesn't matter if it's not finished. Okay, last. That's it. And let's just stop writing now. Just let the pen run out or pencil run out. Okay, so this is a good thing to do. Just just to start writing and write. Just write with a flowingness as well. So when I'm doing say art lessons as well, sometimes I get people to write the names, but to draw the names. So you do your name and you draw your name out, and then you can do all sorts of spirals and patterns in there. So let's do that now. This is a good one to do, and then we can go on to the object. So we've just written something. Now let's just draw your name. Don't just write it as if it's boring. It's a work of art. It, it's a growing leaf of beauty. So you just draw your name, and then you can embellish around it. Just keep going. Don't worry about going wrong. There's no going wrong with this. This is flowing out. So imagine it's like a stream that's coming out, and it flows where it flows. Don't block the flow of it. Let it flow. Don't go with, oh, it should be written like this. No, it shouldn't. Let it be drawn out, your name. And it's your name. So think about who you are. It's your name. Embellish it. So we've been in nature for this conversation so far. So nature could come into your name. You can put leaves upon it if you wish. If you're a bit stuck, you're not sure, or just patterns, just simple patterns, spirals, curves, whatever you want. Just spend another 30 seconds on this. This is something you can do all day if you wanted, or for 10 minutes, or for a minute. Just have a flow about this with your name. So this last bit, the last embellishments upon your name. And this is something you can return to, of course. And people can always pause the video here and just carry on and then come back. So this is a wonderful thing about this. Okay, so now we've done the writing, we've done the name. Before we get to the object, let's do one more quick 1 minute thing. Now, let's think about a poetic feel. So we've got poetry so far and we've got art. Let's put the two together. So rather than describe something like the leaves are green, you could write the greening leaves. So think of a simple few words that describe something and then make it poetic description. And then do the same as that you did with your name. So you write this slight poetic, like the greening leaves, you draw it out, keep it nice and short, don't do a whole sentence, you can just a few words. Draw it out and then embellish it with drawing, patterns, whatever it be. The flowing river, So again, we're getting away from the staticness of description, then into a poetic rendition of it, a poetic rendering of these words, and then an artistic one. So we'll just spend 30 seconds on that. Again, if people want to pause the video and spend a bit more time on it, they're more than welcome to. The great thing about art is you're your own teacher, so you make the rules. Just think about beginning to end that. Again, if you can always come back to this, people can come back or pause the video. But just think about gradually coming to the end on this one, and then we'll do the final one after that. So the last one to do, so again, the object, Tom, so you got that little stone, haven't you, for instance? So that object, and then if people can't have an object in front of them, just keep it simple, whatever it be. You can draw a memory or a feeling. Again, there's no definite rules on this one. Or if you're listening, you can, and you're not drawing, you can just sort of draw something in your mind. See if you can see it as you draw it. Okay, and then just take the object, look at the object, draw it, look at the object, draw it, keep looking at it and drawing it, and then gradually stop looking at it and just draw. So use the object as stimulant to begin with, a visual stimulant to inspire you to start drawing, and then gradually just draw without thinking too much. And the object that you're drawing, you can come away from what it looks like and you can embellish it however you wish. It's a way in. And again, people can pause the video if you want. And the thing about this is it's a sense of freedom with it and flow. without feeling restricted. But these are all, it just shows simple things like this that people have imagination immediately. People often say to me, "Why don't I have an imagination?" And I get them doing this, and suddenly they've got imagination. They have imagination, they just don't realize they have imagination. Because we like to put things into segments. This means this means that, etc. And just the flow, because it also difficult way to start anything is to start it. The best way to start something is to start it. And then you work out how to do it.
Absolutely. And that's a I really enjoy doing these exercises, and I love the way you led it, and that's a gift for others following these exercises, and combining the visual with the words is really, really, really beautiful thing to do. 'Cause sometimes I think that I think often in more words than I do in images. But when after I came to your event, um, whenever it was last year, I kind of or early in I forget when it exactly was, but yeah, I kind of yeah, I noticed it was funny because I don't do that much drawing, but then I started to get into it, and my partner said, "Oh, you've got like this beautiful little kind of 9-year-old boy in you when you're kind of drawing." Because I get so sort of absorbed, and I have this sort of joy for it. But then you look back and you kind of realize maybe I kind of stopped drawing when I was about 9 years old or something like that. So I'm kind of going back to that time when I kind of drifted on to other things. But what I found really affirming is that it didn't take me that long, just a few weeks of kind of regular drawing before I really felt like my drawing was going to a deeper level in a way. And although I had a story in my head before that, I just wasn't that good at drawing. When I was following your guidance and some of the other things and just copying things, I actually was quite surprised how more fluid I became with it, So that was really nice.
I suppose it's a bit like yoga then, isn't it? Because you obviously practice yoga, you teach yoga,
Yeah,
etc. So I guess it's just the awkwardness at the beginning of certain pauses, and it's going against what you do. But once you get into it, there's a flow and there's a routine and there's a rhythm about it, isn't there? And then as you go into that, you deepen it and you learn different aspects within each move and how you go from one
yeah.
move to another. So.
But do you find as well, I find within myself that although I might be doing something like drawing, and you probably encounter this sometimes when you're running your workshops and retreats through art, that I'm drawing, but there's another part of my mind that thinks I should be doing something else because it seems like a sort of leisure activity. And I think more and more these days, we're very conditioned to think that we should be sort of responding to emails or responding to messages, or it's like that kind of monkey mind sort of thing that in a way we need to slow down, don't we? At least to some extent, to kind of get into the flow of art. But are there particular ways that you use to help people just give themselves permission, permission to actually spend time doing art when the world seems to be, racing away doing other stuff?
Yeah, very good word, permission. I use that word permission as well. You got to give you. It's like I have to give people permission to do it, which is very. We can pick up on that word because that'll explain quite a lot. Because all our lives we go to school, don't we, from a very young age, and we're taught to do certain things in certain ways. When you go to college, when you go to get a job, whatever it be, whatever your pilgrimage in life is or your way in life, we all it's like, I don't mean this in the big negative way, but there is a sense of conditioning within this. And so we often need to have permission to do this because, oh, we have to go to school at this time. Can I, excuse me, miss, can I go to the toilet? You need permission, etc.
Mm,
Whatever it be. So so I go into art societies, for instance, and a lot of the people there are retired, and they've had that all their life. So I'll do things like visionary drawing and imaginative drawing, and that's a completely alien prospect
yeah.
for them. But
Mm.
when they start going with it, it isn't an alien prospect; it's a natural thing for them. But at the beginning, I have to give them permission because they think, oh no, we've got to do it like this. We've got to draw this. We've got to do this. And just to do something like that, simple exercise back there, going from drawing an object and then coming away from the object and drawing within is a massive thing for some people. It is it is so difficult. Um, but once they start to do it and start to give themselves permission, it's good. So a good way of doing it, and a good reason for it, is because creativity is a natural part of being human. So if you are not give yourself time to be creative, you are not being fully human.
Do you
You have to
think
be
this?
yourself.
Do you think it's partly because if someone asks me to draw a table in front of me, this is an objective thing that I can draw and feel this is a real thing, I'm drawing it. But if someone asks me to draw something in my from my own imaginal world, that in a way, well, first there's a sense that you need to have a connection to that inner world. And for some people that can be quite scary. I've been with friends and their family members in monasteries or ashrams and things, and they've sat down in a room to do meditation. They've literally run out the room like after about 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, because they've never actually had to sit with their own experience or their own inner world before. And that can be quite, a frightening thing for people, because we do live in a culture that very much affirms the outside reality but doesn't really honor. I mean, you do, I do, but in general, the mainstream doesn't honor that inner world so much.
No, it's I, I also think it ignores it, but it's not because it's not always on purpose that it's ignored. It's like it's a strange thing, really, because I think it does open up things. So those people who've run out, it opens up truths within them
Mm,
and who they really are. And so to draw, people might think, oh yeah, am I wasting my time doing this? Am I doing that? There's that nagging voice going, yeah, no, you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And then when you get past the nagging voice, you suddenly go into, oh my God, these things are opening up. Should I be here? I feel uncomfortable about it. And if you keep going, you suddenly open this door into this paradise.
mm,
And you'll see how incredibly beautiful and fulfilling it is to be creative in whatever form you
yeah.
take. Um, but yes, so I do things like I remember. I think we did it on the course, the Journey into Art course that we did. I do things like drawing doubt demons. I call them doubt demons. So you can think about all these archetypes that we have in us, and doubt demons. They're like, as the name suggests, the demons are like little creatures, little things, and they kind of stop us from doing stuff. But you
Mm,
also feel a familiarity with them and a tenderness towards them. So it's
mm,
not like they're bad, but they might block. They're a blockage to you, but also they're a part of you that you're neglecting as well.
mm,
So when I do these courses, I want everyone who participates put form to these creatures, so they draw them out. You did one, didn't you? You did one or two.
I did one, yeah. I remember what
Yeah,
it looked like. Yeah, I've still got it in one
yeah.
of the notebooks.
And the thing about that is to understand what it is, and then to give it a name. And when you name something or give it a personality, it comes more alive, so you can understand it better as well. Again,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
that's just, yeah, and yeah, I remember. I'm just
oh,
thinking whether or not to make myself vulnerable by describing my own doubt demon. But the thing is that, as you say, there's a reason why we either do or don't do things or allow ourselves to do things, and if we can kind of externalize it a little bit and feel the form of it, then we can maybe have a more healthy relationship to that, or at least to feel it, what actually is the blockage for us. Yeah, kind of going beyond the self-criticism or the doubt or the sadness or the whatever it is, like the deeper layers of what it might be. So I hope everyone knows what we're talking about here. I think that Eddie and I think we know what we're talking about. I
yeah,
hope you can all relate to it. But
yeah.
it's not just, it's not just the doubt, it's not just the demons, it's also, I think, giving space for what we could call like the golden shadow or something, the kind of the really positive aspects of our being that also we don't allow into the space for some reason.
Sure.
With for whatever reason, maybe you were at school and you were told that you were wild or something, or that you had to restrain yourself, or that you were told by your parents that although you were having spiritual experiences, they thought you were kind of cracking up in some sort of way or losing it. There's lots of reasons why we close down, and I think this is like particularly so in the Western world. And touching back to what one of the figures we began with in the beginning of this call, Blakey and William Blake, that sense of the mind forged manacles that we kind of live with in some sort of way, and how we can kind of find a way to release ourselves from that. And it is partly for me just about allowing ourselves to actually just be ourselves, rather than the person that we think other people want us to be for some reason.
Perfect.
You
That's
know,
really good. What you just said then was brilliant. Yeah, I think
very much.
we live by how everyone else has painted us, in a sense, especially from your childhood, because you're finding your way in your childhood, but you still have elements of your childhood as you grow up, but also you've got more chance to sculpt yourself, shall we say,
Mm.
as you grow up. So there might be people from your younger years who perceive you in a certain way, and it's not always a positive way. So you don't want to put the stigma of their view on you. You want to
Yeah.
be able to create your own path too. So it's a sense of sometimes you got to sort of shake things off, and just not rebuild, but be you, truthful essence. And I actually think we are incredible beings. We are incredible, and what we neglect in ourselves
Very
is
much.
more than what we grow. Shall
Exactly.
we say?
Yeah, exactly. No, I resonate with that. It reminds me a bit of Don Juan, the figure in Carlos Castaneda's books. When he's talking to Carlos, he says at some point, at the beginning of your spiritual life, what you need to do is you need to move to a new place when no one knows you. So, and his point was that that can free yourself up from what you're talking about, kind of living in the personas that and the way other people perceive you, which can be quite and also that obviously we live with our karma wherever we live, but sometimes we may have done things in the past that weren't that skillful in some way.
Mm.
And if the people around you really associate you with that side of yourself at that time, it can be, I'm not saying to anyone move to a different place, just coming back to the point that we were talking about, like the way to allow ourselves to be truly ourselves in the way that we want to manifest, rather than living through the kind of, as you say, the ways that we've either painted ourselves in the past or other people have painted how they want us to be.
Yeah, yeah, very much so.
Um, so I think we covered a lot of ground here. I don't want to give all the gems away in one go. So it would be wonderful if for Eddie and I to chat again at some point.
Mm.
But we've covered some wonderful territory. And also, I don't want to make these videos too long because it'll probably put people off from watching them if they're like way hours and hours. So maybe we'll just leave it there with the gems that we've given.
Okay.
How can people reach out to you, Eddie? What's the best way with your website, or if people want to contact you about your art, or?
Well, yeah, my website. So my website is www.edwardfosterart.co.uk. So it's just my name, Edward Foster Art. And some websites on there. Obviously, people can see my artwork and stuff I'm doing. I'm on social media quite a bit, Facebook, Instagram, and so it's usually just under Edward Foster. There's connections on my website as well, and I have a YouTube as well, which is Edward Foster Art. On the YouTube, I share art, music, poetry, writings, whatever it be. Some about how I create some of the artwork. So William Blake, there's a video on how I created a drawing of William
Oh,
Blake
wow.
and all the things in there. So, for instance, yeah, it's that way, and then
We'll put these. I'll put these links in the video description, and do sign up if people want to this channel to receive sort of similar content. But thank you so much for coming on, Eddie. It's been an absolute pleasure.